Does he have it?
Medeiros is going to get it.
Oh, they're going to toss it. They haven't got it.
He's on the outside line, though, going into the fastest corner on the circuit. Surely this can't work.
Dominic Ligner has got a sensational run outside line now, though, for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's come back into play. Exactly. Miller's still such trouble. He's not a second and change. All of a sudden, Miller's back in play.
Can Barry do it? Big Barry's going to do it. Big Barry!
Well, it's time to go racing here at the original site of the Hendricks Army Airfield, a B-17 pilot training base between 1941 and 1946 as Sebring International Raceway, located in central South Florida, just 70 miles south of Orlando, hosts round number 3 of the 2025 NARS Virtual Modern Sports Car Championship. Hello and welcome to everybody. As you can see, we are at round 3 of the championship. We've still got Monterey, Detroit, the Glen, Mosport, Road America, Indy, Road Atlanta and VIR to round off the season. And if you are watching on both Champion Motorsports and JP Broadcasting, welcome along. My name's Alex Goldschmidt, and joining me in the booth is the returning James Parfitt. We'll have Ross Smith joining us at times during the broadcast to give his insight, but there's a lot of things that we need to talk about. And firstly, we need to talk about the circuit itself. And more to the point, it's been around since December of 1950, measures just over 3.74 miles, just a shade over 6 kilometers, and has 17 turns, such as Sunset Bend, the Le Mans Curve, Bishop Bend, Flying Fortress Straight, Collier, Cunningham, Tower Turn, and more to the point, there's quite a lot of variable asphalt surfaces. In other words, different bits of tarmac that the driver's going to have to get used to. Here are the strategy corners, so keep the tyres cool and really control the throttle on exit when it comes to the GT3s. So the cars to beat will be the Mercedes-AMG, the McLaren 720S, the Lamborghini Huracan, and the Porsche 992. So tyres, mediums. There you've got the Hypercars. Cars to beat, of course, the wonderfully sounding V-Series Cadillac, the 9X8 from Peugeot, the Porsche 963, and the 499P from Ferrari. 22 to 25 minutes per stint, 3 to 4 stops possibly, and a combination deciding whether you go on medium or hard tyres. 2x on fuel. And then keys to the race. Well, it is a very bumpy and undulating circuit, even though it is flatter than a pancake in the Netherlands. It is respect the bumps, use the traffic to your advantage, and pick your marks for the night, as in with regards to where you're braking, where you're going to be accelerating, and more to the point, it really is going to be an absolute slobber knocker here tonight. We've got 32 cars coming into this round of the championship, and on LMGT3 AM, well, David Anderson leads the way ahead of Paul Ibbotson, with Stephen Miller rounding out the top 3. And as Alexander McQuarrie for Dark Thunder Racing in 4th, ahead of Tom Nacella, Daniel Kent, Max Sunthottenlap, and Olivier Gervais rounding out the 8 in the category. Next up, LMGT3. 2 wins from 2 so far, following on from Daytona and at Long Beach. Ryan Pulbert Reyes on a maximum haul of 60 points in the 992 GT3. Alan Holden in the 296 Ferrari, just 8 points adrift. And then you've got Eric Jacobs in the LSD Motorsport entry, 41 points for him, 40 points for James Walker, with Dave Coles rounding out the top 5. Matthew Overton, Don Fryman, William Schlichling, and Jamie Zalecki round out your 9 in the standings for LMGT3 Pro. LMP2, it's been 2 for 2 for Shade Tree Motorsports' Alec King, who has no backup in the form of teammate JT Tammy, who's actually at Sebring, because this weekend on the 15th means it's round 2 of the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. So people are getting their IRL sports car fix rather than being here with us on the virtual side of things. Luciano Icciardo, 8 points behind in second. JT Tammy rounds out the top 3. Martin Tucker Tucker Martin for TP Performance by STM rounds out 4th, ahead of Cole McMillan, Becky Ely Clark, Tom Lane, Preston McNair, Josh McGlinsky, and Eugene Mazur round out the top 10. Michael Lock rounds out the standings out of 18 cars that joined us at the Daytona International Speedway. And then we get to Hypercar AM. Gilles Lalonde leads the way in the Peugeot 9X8 as he's got 56 points to his credit. Lanny Hall in second, out of John Mayer, with Carl Strahal and Adrian Rice rounding out your top 5. Adrian was the winner in the Hypercar AM classification at Daytona. Oliver Day, Norm Graff, Diego Rodriguez, and Philippe Ducati round out your top 9 in Hypercar AM. Well, more to the point, Hypercar Pro, it's been Daniel Kirby in the 963 Porsche, the number 80, that has led the way in terms of things happening. And with that in mind, let's bring in James Parfitt. Welcome back, buddy. Dan Kirby, 2 wins out of 2. He's got Troy in. A bit of a difficult one for Johnny Gutierrez, who not only got insult to injury thrown at him through a stop and hold penalty for not holding his brakes, but he got absolutely T-boned into T1 at the 1.5 hours of Long Beach last time out. It is going to be an interesting one here. Bumps, undulations, adverse tarmac changes. The drivers are really going to have to be on their A game tonight.
Yeah, they definitely are. I think it's going to be an interesting one. I'm welcoming Kim D into YouTube chat as well. Much appreciated for joining us on that one. Some people don't like Sebring. Other people do. You know, our good friend Mr. Ewan O'Leary despises Sebring. He thinks it's boring. I don't, however, feel it's boring. I think that's a little bit harsh, but it is challenging in its own right. I think that's the thing with Sebring. And you know, when you come out of Le Mans and you're running down the Ullman and then you're going down into Sunset, the final corner, before you go into turn 1, it's always going to be very difficult. And I think there's going to be a lot of incidents. I'll be interested to see how the Porsche handles this evening as well, to see what goes on with that. But overall, I think it should be a good one. I think some of these guys will enjoy it. I think some of them will sit back and not enjoy it. Who knows how this is going to turn out?
Well, let's ask a man who has joined us in the booth for the first 2 rounds of the season so far. Ross Smith from Champion Sim Racing joins us. Ross, good evening. Welcome back in the booth. Your thoughts on what we could expect here at Sebring here for round 3?
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, you and James pretty much have it down pat. This track is a love or hate relationship. I can say personally, I fit somewhere in the middle. I think that it is kind of an interesting layout. It's certainly it's more interesting than some other rounds, I think, in the championship. It has a lot of history. Obviously, you're going to get a lot of diehards, a lot of rednecks out there who love their Sebring, and it does offer a lot of unique challenges relative to any of the courses throughout the season. And personally, like I said, I love the layout, although I seem to be forever cursed here. I just, you know, even if I'm doing great in a race, it just decides, you know, we're done with you, and tosses me aside. And you'll probably see a few other drivers who experience something very similar throughout the race. You know, you've got to have a really, really good setup that's going to be able to cater to the way that this track is. It's a little Jekyll and Hyde in the way that you might be running through and it feels really good, and then all of a sudden our balance changes, or, you know, once you go into the night, because the track cools off, suddenly the car just doesn't hook up the same way it did before, and this can catch a lot of drivers out, just on top of the competition they have to deal with, the bumps. I mean, those are obviously the #1 thing that people think of when they think of Sebring as a driver, is just how violent it pogo sticks the cars around, especially around sunset. So yeah, it's going to have a lot of challenges, a lot for the drivers to think about in the hour and a half that they're going to be on the circuit.
Yeah, we're coming down to the final couple of seconds here in warm-up ahead of the 90-minute race. Of course, Daniel Kirby has been the tour de force in the number 90 963 Porsche Hybrid, and of course that is not going to be any different, I'm sure of. But JP, we're going to have that interesting bit where the drivers are going to be driving into the night, and Sebring is even more challenging under nightfall.
Yeah, I think I would prefer to be out on the racetrack coming into the night, mind you. For some reason, the server was just set back. I was reset to 5 minutes of warm-up, so we are going to look like we've got another 5 minutes. I think if you're doing stints, for instance, in the 12-hour, you know, going from all of a sudden daytime and with your last stint and then being chucked into the night, you're going to have, you know, there's going to be an issue. These guys are doing the daytime to nighttime stint, so they should, in theory, recognize where their braking points are, because they would have already done it in the day, so they should be able to see where they are in the night. I'm going to say theoretically, because I'm sure there's some people that will get it wrong, and, you know, famously, round Sebring, you do have the cat's eyes that should illuminate the track in some shape or form. But I don't know. I think nighttime brings different challenges, and unless they've practiced running in the night, they could be in trouble, Alex, to be honest with you. But, you know, look, Ross would know more about running it from day to night.
Yeah, it is going to be one of those tall orders. I think, obviously, the biggest bone of contention, guys, is going to be lap 1, turn 1, because they're going to be going at a big lick of speed. I mean, even when they come out of Sunset Bend, that's going to be another point that we'll need to talk on very shortly. But turn 1, lap 1, especially if you're being caught by back marker traffic, let's say in a hypercar situation here, Ross, the GT3s, like we've seen, have been caught up within the first 8 to 10 minutes of any race that we've had so far. First at Daytona, then at Long Beach, and now we've got this old school airfield that now is one of the biggest challenges within modern day sports car racing that the drivers are really going to have to get to grips with early. And depending on, obviously, when you look at the hypercars, they're going to have to make the choice of, do I go on the mediums, do I go on the hards? I've got to consider the abrasive surface, you know, the scrubbing of the tires when they go through corners, and then also having to make their way through traffic rather easily.
Yeah, you you nailed a lot on the head there. So the tire situation is one that's interesting. Like I was saying before, with the way that the temperatures and everything play around with it, it's very easy to kind of lose your footing on this track just because of the way the bumps are. It's very easy to get too much induced slip, because you really want the car to be able to move around here, especially on some of the paved, more purpose-built portions of the track. You really need to be able to get in and off those corners quickly to maximize your speed through those segments, especially Sector 2 and then kind of the first part of Sector 3. And if you do that, then you need to be just on top of the car and make sure that it's not getting away from you, because kind of going back to your comment about turn 1, that's going to be a site for a lot of interesting action throughout the night. Because you've got, obviously, it's a very fast corner. You're coming off that Sunset Bend, you're hauling down the front straight, and you have to lift up, you have to back off, but it's not like going into Sunset where you're slowing down quite a bit. You're trying to hold on as much pace as you can, and you're going to see a lot of drivers dropping off the right side of the track into the dirt. And you're trying to carry so much speed through there, and it's a corner that changes a lot. I mean, we've seen in real life, it's a site for a lot of spectacular incidents. And when you've got drivers who are combating and trying to get their way in there and really set themselves up for the S's through 2, 3, 4, 5, they're going to be doing everything they can to make sure that they end up in front. So you're going to see a lot there. And watch for the drivers coming off pit road, because they have to make their way around the cones. They have to come back in, and it's up to all parties to make sure that everyone has a fair shot at being able to get on the track. It's one of the most difficult pit road exits that you'll see on this calendar, just because it very awkwardly shoots cars out from the pits almost straight into traffic, and everyone's kind of at a point where they're trying to figure out, it's sort of, who's getting out of the roundabout, like eyes are kind of everywhere, and, is everyone going to play the right way, or is somebody going to just sort of take their turn and hustle things along? So keep an eye out there. It's going to be a real explosive corner.
Well, Ross, you mentioned about exit of pit lane. James, I want to talk to you about pit lane entry. That's where we can see a few dramas heading into Sunset Bend, and you and I have seen it quite a few times before, where multi-class racing hasn't condoned itself quite well to a GT3 trying to get in, and then all of a sudden a GTP comes flying along, and then wallop goes straight into the back of it, and then someone ends up with a lengthy repair time in the pit lane.
I think that's the thing. They've got to make it aware that they are going in pit lane, right? Because if a GT3 is slowing down and a hypercar wants to dive up the inside to get past him, and then the next the GT3 wants to go in the pits, it could cause all sorts of drama. So hopefully these guys will call it out as they're going into the pit lane. Most of them are sat in the voice chat above us, so hopefully they will be notifying anybody who's alongside or coming up to them, look, I'm going into the pits, please don't crash into me. But mistakes happen, and I've been there, and to be honest with you as well, and I sometimes forget to call out what's going on. But I think for some of these guys, I'm hoping that they should remember to call it out, because if they don't, well, yeah, chaos.
Yeah, and there could be chaos over the next 90 minutes here at Sebring for round 3 of the Virtual Modern Sports Car Championship for 2025. And, well, it is not going to be Daniel Kirby on pole position. Ben Kesby has stuck it on pole in the caddy. He's going to be joined by Troy Urian for CMS Pro Blue on the front row. Daniel Kirby versus Johnny Gutierrez on row number 2 in the Hypercar Pro category. Then we've got Edgy Karabasak and John Uyan rounding out the top 6. Then the next row, well, it's Jerry Chen that's going to be leading the AM Hypercar class. He'll be joined by John Marr on that row. Gilles Lalonde and Norm Graf will round out the overall top 10. Then it's Tucker Martin and Micah Locke, who are the front row for the LMP2s. They'll be joined by Alec King and Oliver Day in the next place Hypercar AM class. Sorry, it's a bit too early. Get your words out right, Goldschmidt. As everything's going to go on to the official formation lap. Then we've got Carl Strahal and Lanny Hall, Ryan Paulbert Reyes and James Walker leading the LMGT3 overall. Paul Ibbotson and Max Thonlap will be next up. They're in LMGT3 AM. Alan Holden and Matthew Overton will be on the next row. That's row 12. Then it's Alexander McQuarrie and Eric Jacobs on row 13. Stephen Miller and Stacey Scotts round out the 14th row on the grid. And it's going to be David Anderson and Frank Radosti rounding out our top 30, and Olivier Gervais joined by the man who's second in LMP2 at the moment, Luciano Uchiazzo, who's going to start from the rear of the field. Now, the big thing is that we've got the orange section, which is turns 1 to 7. Ross, that's going to be very, very important for these drivers to negotiate, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and to be honest, it's going to be that way across all of those slippery sectors. I mean, like I was saying, S's in 2, 3, 4. It really sets you up through the segment that they're going through right now, through the Big Bend, coming off of the hairpin, going through those little jogs there. Every single one of those segments, it puts a lot of wear on the cars, and it does it in a very similar way where you want to control how much you're pushing into it, because the more that you keep trying to dig in, the more you're going to heat up those tires, especially the rears. And that's where some of the cars like Gutierrez in the 9X8, he's in an all-wheel drive, and that's going to help him a little bit as he goes throughout the race. And I was going to say Ben Kesby, although I keep forgetting that he's no longer in the 499. He's running up there in the Cadillac. But I guess he's going to be the only one. So I'm sorry. The other one I think is Gutierrez's teammate. Yeah, Gilles Lalonde. So both of them will kind of have a little bit of advantage on tire wear coming through here. But as they go through some of these twistier bits, depending on how their setup is, you might see them kind of wax or wane as the segments go on. We'll have to kind of see.
So there are some penalties to be served from last time out at Long Beach. David Anderson, after an incident with Paul Ibbotson, is going to have to serve a stop-go. Tucker Martin has got the trundle of shame down the pit lane, aka what we like to call a drive-through penalty. Ben Kesby has a stop-go, and Johnny Gutierrez gets a stop-and-hold 5-second penalty, even though he did get properly harpooned into turn 1 at Long Beach. Did not hold his brakes sufficiently enough, or lack thereof, giving him a stop-hold 5-second penalty. But Ben Kesby is going to lead the field down towards the final few couple of corners. Of course, we've got Genderbean Bend, and then you've got the 90 right down Le Mans curve, which now brings them onto the Ullman Straight, where these drivers will be going hell for leather. You can see everyone getting into the 2x2 rolling start. So the hypercars will be released first, then a gap to the LMP2s before GT3s will then be told to go green. But it's going to be down to Kesby and Oyen to line up, line astern. They'll make sure that happens coming through into Sunset Bend. So we are under starters orders for round 3 of the 2025 North American Racing Series Virtual Modern Sports Car Championship here in 2025 at the famed Sebring International Raceway, as our front 2 come out of Sunset Bend. And now it's just wait until we get given the signal to go green. 90 minutes on the counter here in central southern Florida, just south of Orlando, and we are going to be going green this time around. And now it's going to be Kesby versus Oyen, pedal to the metal. Kirby's got a good launch in 3rd place as we head into turn 1. Kesby to the inside takes the initial advantage per the racing line. A little bit of a drift wide by Troy Oyen, but that was one of the NX8s, 9X8s going out wide. I think that might have been Lalonde or Gutierrez, but a very good start as we get underway with LMP2 action. As Michael Lock leads the way, but takes a trip through the grass and goes exit stage right through T1. So Tucker Martin takes the initial lead, but he's just had a massive moment going through in towards turn 2. And that has dropped him from the lead to the back end of the LMP2s. Meantime, James Walker is leading. Well, it's Ryan Paulbert Reyes that is going to be leading the way in the GT3s overall. Paul Ibbotson leads GT3 AM, but James, straight away, the LMP2s literally must have heard me talking about turn 1, lap 1, and then, well, it didn't go well for Micah Dawn, nor did it go well for Tucker Martin.
No, nobody really wanted to be in control of that grid. Unfortunately, there was a couple of people that took the lead, and then as soon as they did it, they ended up going off. But now we've got Alec King leading the way in the LMP2s. We've got Ben Kesby leading in the Hypercar Pros, with Jerry Chen leading the Hypercar AMs at the moment. He's ahead of John Mayer, as you said. Ryan Paulbert Reyes and James Walker leading the Hypercar. Paul Ibbotson leading the GT3 Pro and AMs, respectively, all at the same time. So lots of things gone on already at the beginning, and you know, they've just got to settle down now. They've got to settle down. Tucker Martin, Luciano Acciazzo running side by side down into the final corner. Are they going to be able to make it through? Martin's on the inside. He sends it in deep. Yes, does get through on Luciano Acciazzo. Of course, our leader for all of about 5 seconds.
Yep, which means that Alec King, like we've seen in the past 2 rounds, Ross, has gotten to the lead early. Well, the previous 2 rounds, he actually qualified it on pole in class, and look at the big old gap that he's got. It's about 2.2 seconds back to Mika Dunn in 2nd place. Michael Lock rounding out the top 3, so Alec King now has an opportunity to... Well, he's more than broken that toe. He's scarpered away quite significantly, and that's exactly the advantage he needed. Didn't qualify on pole in the class, qualified P3, but it was right place, right time.
Yeah, it's just incredible. I mean, it's almost like he was just born and raised in a prototype. the guy just is a fish to water in these things, and it's amazing how much that he can just hook right up. And like you said, he didn't qualify on pole, which is a little bit of a shock, but he's even said himself he's not much of a hot lapper, but man, he can find that pace and just extract it real fast.
Yeah, so he's really starting to get an early hand on this. Looks like there is a penalty for, well, I don't know whether David Anderson has actually served his stop-go, but there was a penalty just showing according to the server. But Alec King, 14th place overall, leads LMP2 as we are, well, I mean, at the moment, Ben Kesby has started to pull away from the rest of the opposition. He's about 3.2 seconds ahead of Daniel Kirby, who rounds out the top 3 overall, but Alec King has started to get away. New fastest lap of the race, Ben Kesby, 1:48.028. Purples across the board for the leading caddy there, James. But we know that Sebring can be rather unforgiving.
It can at the moment. I am fighting fires at the moment. There's a problem with the frame rate on the broadcast. It looks more like a picture book than an actual broadcast. So bear with me why I try and resolve this issue. Not entirely sure why we've got this going on all of a sudden, as we were fine 5 minutes ago. So just bear with me while I try to do that. If you and Ross can talk it out, and I'll carry on fighting the fires in the background.
No problem at all, James. But Ross, I think it's, you know, Ben Kesby came here with a statement of intent. Okay, yes, he's got a stop-go penalty to serve in this race, but for him going to one of the best-sounding GTPs on the grid, I have to be completely honest with you. When that thing fires up, it's a complete... It's one of those ASMR exhaust sounds that everyone will just shut up and listen to.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if I can say it's the best. I do enjoy the Cadillac. It is a nice thundering V8, and as an American, I have to enjoy it. I think it's written in the Constitution or something. But I will say that Norm Graf running back there in that Aston Martin Valkyrie, I'm sure you've probably listened to some of the videos, or hopefully you had a chance to hear it in real life, but man, that thing just, it loves to scream like they used to back in the 80s and 90s, and I love hearing that car go, man. It just sounds so great, especially what they've done with it when opening up the exhaust a little bit more. I know that Scar Pope, who's been helping us out on a lot of the audio, he's been able to open that car up even more himself, so that way we can get more of the true sounds for how it's supposed to be sounding this weekend, like you mentioned, with the real run of the Sebring 12-hour. So yeah, it's doing great. I'm used to seeing Norm in the Cadillac, actually. He's usually a GM guy, but he's been running the season. He's just said, you know what, I'm taking on something different. I've been hunkered down in this caddy for 2 years now. I'm ready to just try something else. And right now he's putting a lot of pressure on. Who's that? Gilles Lalonde, I think, up in front of him that he's going to put pressure on. Yep, as they come into GT traffic.
Yeah, that is the case. And that V12 Cosworth developed engine screaming to about nearly 10,000 RPM. Now, penalties have been served by Ben Kesby, Johnny Gutierrez, and Tucker Martin. So they have all three served their respective penalties. I would imagine that David Anderson has done the same as well, because he had a stop-go, but Norm Graf closing in Gilles Lalonde, and they have got, I think that's Oliver Day in front of them in the Porsche 963, the number 74. So leaders with about 7 minutes of this race out of 90 completed. Troy Uyen is leading, but Dan Kirby has been threatening since the last lap was completed, when they came out of Le Mans, down Ullman and then into Sunset Bend. The gap between them is about half a second. Jerry Chen leads the Hypercar AM category by the best part of 4.5 seconds. Alec King leading LMP2 by 3 seconds. Ryan Paulbert Reyes leading LMGT3 by the best part of 2 seconds. Paul Ibbotson leading now by probably the best part of just over 1.7 seconds, but Norm Graf now coming out of Sunset Bend in that naturally aspirated V12 behemoth known as the Aston Martin Valkyrie. Gilles Lalonde was trying to size up a move on the inside of Oliver Day into turn 1. No room at the end there, I'm afraid, for the for the Peugeot 9X8, the Evo version, which now has a rear wing on the back of the monocoque. But there you see your class leaders at the top of the timing tower. Uyen leading Hypercar, Chen leading Hypercar Am, King leading LMP2, then Reyes and Ibbotson leading. We got on board with Norm Graf in this wonderful car, and it is just the case of just how you can see that Norm is having a little bit of a struggle here, but he, like you said, Ross, he said, I'm going to try and give it a go. Gilles Lalonde is sizing up a move on the inside of Oliver Day. They make side contact between the pair of them, and Lalonde just goes round the outside in that Peugeot, was very close to exceeding track limits, but gets the move completed. That's absolutely brilliant there for Gilles Lalonde. Now up to P3 in Hypercar Am. Norm Graf has now got, that's Ben Kesby trying to go around the outside of him, dives to the inside. Oh, front and rear contact between the pair. That was millimeters between the pair of them. That was definitely a code brown moment for the pair, as Norm just goes a little bit wide coming out of Le Mans, but still manages to keep that throttle pinned at 4th gear at about 140 miles an hour.
Yeah, I don't even know if it was millimeters. They're becoming one. But yeah, I think you're right. Norm is he's pushing a little bit to try and get to grips with that car. I know it was actually based on when we ran the AMR Pro. A lot of the similar traits carrying over for how it is. So it does take a lot of setup work to get going and work right. And unfortunately, Norm is one I know he doesn't do too much with setup, although now we see Kesby coming up through and making short work of Oliver Day. He's going to have his eyes set right on Gilles Lalonde as well. So he's really breaking up this battle. I'd love to see Norm kind of come into it maybe later in the run and really give Oliver and Gilles a run for the money, because this is a good little battle pack, I think, to keep our eyes on throughout the rest of the race.
Hypercar action, James, never fails to disappoint, does it?
No, it doesn't. Sorry, I was so sat here chilling, listening to you two trying to fight the fires in the background, that it's been a little bit manic out there at the moment, isn't it? And I think that's the thing. We've got Kirby sitting in 2nd place. He's got Troy Uyan in front. That's going to be an interesting battle. We know how hard Troy can fight if he needs to. We've also got GT3 traffic borderline getting themselves involved at the same time, so a lot could go wrong, and it has gone wrong for Troy. He's ran a little bit wide. Coming through Le Mans now, he's going to go battling down the Ullman straight. There's battles all the way through. Norm Graf still fighting out. The LMP2s have settled down. A little bit interested to see how this works out for young Lanny Hall, who is behind the LMP2 leader of Alec King. So Lanny Hall must have had an issue somewhere. Why I was fighting the frame rate problem that I don't even know why it was happening. But I will have a look and find if I can see what's going on.
Yeah, Lanny Hall, the only driver to take the brave pill and go with the Lamborghini SC63. Here we go with the Champion Motorsports replay. Now this is, I was wondering.
It is Lanny Hall. He's already in pit lane.
Ah, okay.
Oh, so hold on.
No, he's still out. He's still out on track, I should say.
Okay, there's no physical reason why Lanny Hall is behind the LMP2 then.
Okay, right. Unless he's had a few dramas. We did have a couple of cars going off, going through turn 1 into turn 2, and then through Gurney into the hairpin before the top part of the circuit through Fangio, Cunningham, Collier, and Tower. But yeah, Lanny doing a very, very good job. But Gilles Lalonde is he's definitely got his aggressive nature turned up to volume number 11 in the number 400 Peugeot 9X8 that we ride on board with. And he's right with
John swing, he missed it.
Daring.
Oh, and he's lost the back end and he's gone around. Oh, Gilles. That was a bit too much there, I think, for him. He just went a bit too Hail Mary round the outside, thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. 2 wheels on the grass, loses the back end, and it spins around 180.
Yeah, that was the end of that for him. For Gilles Lalonde. He was doing so well as well. Sorry, Ross, carry on.
No, it's just saying John gave him, he tried to anyway. He tried to not squeeze him out there on purpose, but yeah, unfortunately, it was too little too late, and I don't think that was ever going to really work.
Yeah, it was a bit of sort of 50-50, you know, John trying to, you know, move a little bit further alongside, but then he would have compromised himself going into the racing line. And I think Gilles just decided to, you know, just throw everything at it and see what would happen. And he ended up with the short end of the stick, unfortunately. But now look at the speed he's got coming out of Sunset Bend. He's right with Oliver Day just up ahead, and Gilles is going to try for the inside line here into turn 1, but Oliver cuts across the front of him because they were coming up against GT3 back marker traffic, and yeah, had to, I mean, that was Oliver just being, you know, very, very cautious. Thought, well, I can do one of two things here, or I can kill two birds with one stone, defend against Gilles whilst getting past the back marker traffic in front of us and not cause an incident. If Gilles was any quicker up and up the inside of him, any further up the inside of him through turn 1, then that could have been disaster for Gilles again for the second time within a lap and a half, as Oliver gets a bit of a tank slapper. That's not what he wants coming out of the hairpin turn.
No, I think for Gilles there, I think he tried to use the back marker to block Ollie Day in. The problem is Ollie already sort of knew what was going to happen and came straight across his nose and cut his nose off and said, well, you got to be further along than that. So, you know, unfortunately for Gilles, he's going to have to fight it out. He is in the X8. Favorite car, awesome car, love that machine, looks absolutely beautiful, but unfortunately for Gilles, he's either got to realize that he has got pace and do it cleanly, or that's not going to be the first incident we're going to find him in.
I completely agree on that one. Meantime, Oliver Day goes a little bit wide. Someone else is slowing down coming out of Le Mans, so that is now going to give the opportunity. So here we go with another Champions Motorsport replay. Now this is that's John Oyen, and loses the back end. I was very lucky that he kept it out of the barriers, just edging backwards whilst holding onto the brakes, and it's a 50-point turn for the caddy, I'm afraid. And then there's even more. There was even faster, you know, there's even hypercar traffic coming through the same corner. So John as a result of that has ended up 10th overall and to the bottom of the hypercar class. Norm Graff in the meantime is closing in on John Marr just in front. So that is the battle for P2 in hypercar AM, Caddy versus Aston. And this is really, really getting very, very up close and personal here, isn't it, guys?
Yeah. Who do you think is going to come out on top, Russ?
Well, Norm is definitely finding his legs in that Valkyrie, so I think he's going to put a lot of pressure on Meyer. Although I have to say, John's been he's been really picking it up over the last couple years. It's been fun and interesting watching him as he's been able to climb the ranks. I know he's an AM, but I've seen him put on some really good performance that's been able to rival some of the pros that we see throughout the field. So I don't think he's going to let Norm by too easily, although Norm is also a very aggressive driver, so he's going to put the screws to him once he gets up there.
Do wonder how John's going to handle this, whether or not he's going to just, you know, sit back and think, oh, is this really my fight? But you can hear that Valkyrie engine just, oh, it's like a rocket ship.
Doesn't need any afterburners on the back of that thing, that's for damn sure. It just sounds absolutely glorious as we see the car from our onboard shot here going through Sunset Bend, and now he's got possibly the run, but they've got one of the GT3s in front. This is going to be a bit hairy as Norm tries to thread the eye of the needle through the middle, and they have got Gilles Lalonde right on their case going through into T1. So this is the battle for second, third and fourth in Hypercar AM. Gilles definitely has got the bit between his teeth, and he's, I mean, even at times we sort of, oh, dearie me, that's what you don't want to do to the underfloor there, Norm. He literally sparks flying from the right side between front and rear wheels, but he's really got the pace in that car, and that is going to be Alan Holden they've just got through on, and Gilles is having to wait to see if he can get past the 296 Ferrari, the number 25, that's currently running third in LMGT3 Pro, and, well, no hesitation there from Gilles Lalonde. Straight round the outside like a rat up a drain pipe, and still keeping with Martin Graff and really keeping them on their toes here, James, because this is what you see at Sebring. You see close quarter, non-stop battling through back marker traffic. You are literally on a precipice.
Yeah, you are. I think that's the thing. They've got to try. The problem is where John Mayer passes the cars, Norm Graff's fighting to try and do the same thing, and it's just not worked out with it, especially with that GT3 there. It's not worked out that he can get through. To be fair, considering how aggressive Gilles has got, I'm surprised he was as patient as he was then, because I thought he might have had a die, but now he's going to try and do it side by side down into sunset at the moment. We've got the Valkyrie in front of the 9X8, and well, Gilles Lalonde looking very quick indeed.
These two have history.
Yeah, and he's just getting
they got
past.
beef.
Yeah, they've got beef. They've got a beef they've got to work out, but incredible how they are able to keep these cars on the black stuff and try and get around these back markers. And this is how difficult it can be. And now Norm Graff puts the car between himself and Gilles Lalonde in third and fourth. And who's that closing up on Gilles? That's John Uyen for
John Uyen.
Hypercar Pro, as now Gilles just goes round the outside without a care in the world. Yep, goodbye GT3, see you later. And now it's time to try and close up to Norm again.
It's really weird at the moment, and I'd say this in the nicest possible way, because I am. There's no battles in GT3s. That's why we haven't really focused on them. They're very spread out away from each other. Now, I don't know if that's starting to happen or started to happen since the hypercars started coming through, but there's no battles in GT3s. They are spread out around the circuit. It's 2.7 back from James Walker there. You can see him behind Paul Reyes. Ibbotson separating them in the middle. But then it's 1.6, 4.2, 2.7, 2.1, 20 seconds, 4.5. They're like spread out all the way across the circuit, just on their own, unfortunately, for the GT3. So if anybody, I do apologise, GT3s, but you just, nothing's happening for me to be able to show you anything, apart from you being lapped by the hypercars.
No, and now we go to the battle at the front end of the field. Troy Uyen versus Daniel Kirby. The gap at one point was about 2.5 seconds. It's now half a second, as Kirby, in that very agile Porsche 963 hybrid, trying to close in on the Cadillac V Series GTP. Now, this is going to be very, very interesting. You've got two very different formulas in terms of powertrain, but Kirby has been absolutely masterful for the previous 2 rounds, but this time did not qualify on pole position, qualified on the inside of row number 2. And even if Ben Kesby had not have to serve that penalty at the beginning of the race, then we could have a very, very different story. But more to the point, it is a case of Troy Uyen here, James, has got to really just keep his up, cross the T's, dot the I's, don't make any mistakes, because one wrong move, and that's going to allow Dan Kirby to go through very, very quickly indeed, as he's just under 6/10 off.
Troy is quite an interesting story. He's a young lad. He's not very old. I'm old, so in conjunction with me, he's young. But he has come on leaps and bounds from making his debut last season. He's now getting quicker and quicker and quicker. But you've got the new, it's almost a new Top Gun in Troy Uyen, fighting it away with a champion, the old-timer of Dan Kirby, who he knows quick. So if Troy can hold on to this at least till the pit stop cycle, I think he has done a blinking good job. That's the thing for me, and I think that for Troy to come out and be leading laps and stay ahead of Kirby on merit, I think he's done an exceptional job.
I completely agree with that sentiment, 100%. I mean, the thing is also, Kanabasak was quickest of anybody until Ben Kesby took back the fastest lap of the race and was closing in onto these two, but then just spun the 001 around, and then it just lost him all that momentum, because that's the big thing here about Sebring, Ross, is that if you make a mistake, as we're going to now see a Champions Motorsport replay. Oh, Michael Locke. Oh.
Disconnect.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's a real shame. But we know here at Sebring, Ross, that it's an old school track. It's been around since 1950. It hasn't really changed that much apart from different tarmacs being resurfaced from time to time. But it's more the case of being old school, it bites really, really hard when you make a big error.
Yeah, and we actually saw that a little bit in the background. Ege, who was running third in this battle that we're watching right now, he actually came off the corner that they just went through a couple laps earlier, and he was in this fight. And unfortunately, you'll see right here. So he's catching a little bit of that curb, and then he just came in a little bit too much. And this is exactly what I was talking about at the top of the show, where the tires are they're not worn or anything, but it can really catch you out if you're not expecting, if you're really leaning on the car and you're trying to get the most out of it. And I'm sure he was really paying attention to that fight in front of him, and as they're coming in for pit stop. So this might be of an advantage to him to be able to try and get in there, maybe get some fresh tires, and get himself set up for the second half of the race. Kirby's able to kind of eke it out here, and I was wondering maybe if he was trying to do a little bit of fuel saving, because I feel like with as strong as he is in that Porsche, and as we were seeing him through some of the trickier parts, like through some of the S's, some of the corners, he wasn't attacking Troy the way that you might anticipate him to do. But they are on the same team in the VWSC series. They are both running for CMS Pro. So they're going to give each other respect. They're going to give each other room. I mean, they are going to race each other for sure, but they're not going to, go fisticuffs full way. So I think Daniel, I think he's just kind of playing the slow, methodical game, as we see that champions do. And Troy's, he's not going to give it to him, but we'll see how they come through on this pit cycle. I'm sure Kirby's going to do everything he can to maximize that fuel advantage coming into to the end of this race once he gets those fuel stints in order.
Yeah, I mean, as per the information that we were given about the respective cars before we started this 2025 season, James, that the Porsche is one of the cars that really, really is good on fuel. The 9X8 Evo and the Lamborghini ST63 are very, very high on fuel consumption. So by just mitigating, by staying behind Troy Uyen, just has enabled him to keep it another lap out there as Kirby now pits from the race lead. And this is going to allow Ben Kesby. Now, what is Ben going to do? He's going to dive into pit road now.
That was aggressive.
So, yeah, I mean, it's more the case of that the Porsche, if you get it into the optimum window, as we're about 4 minutes away from hitting a third of the timer counting down here at Sebring, that the more that you do of fuel saving rather than outright trying to do one over on your opponent, is to try and make it count in the strategy overall.
Yeah, they've got to, if they're going to do something, they've got to utilize what they're doing and stick to it. What they don't want to do is jump backwards and forwards. Dan Kirby's on his way out. I'm going to say he would be ahead. He is ahead of Troy. There's Troy in the background. Dan Kirby does go ahead of Troy Uyen. Uyen comes blistering around the corner, however. He's going to need to go up the inside of that LMP2. Does get the job done, but that's the thing. Dan Kirby utilized what he did. He's taken the position and he's saved fuel and carried on. That's it. It's really hard because you see people fuel saving and not everybody's an expert in it, right? I can't fuel save for toffee, just like I can't tire save on NASCAR. I suck, and it's just no point me even trying. I might as well just go out there, run the car until it's dry, or in NASCAR's purpose, run the car until I've hit the wall, and that's it. That's how it is. That's how I race. Fuel saving is a skill, and Dan Kirby is probably one of the people who are great at that skill and getting it right, knowing when to lift and coast, knowing when to ease up, knowing when to make sure you can get around the corner. All of these things go in your head. But now what Kirby's got to do, and this is going to be the interesting thing, is he's got to stick to what he's doing. No point now, he could go out in this middle stint, I suppose, and go out and run it and rag the living daylights out of it, Alex, until it's dry. But, he's got to now think about where is he going to be in the next couple of stops. He's going to need to do at least 2-3 more if that 25 minutes is to be believed. So yeah, lots still on the cards for Kirby, but fuel saving, dude, is a skill that, well, I don't possess.
Yeah, I mean, Ross, when we were seeing the strategy cards for the hypercars, anywhere between 2 to 4 stops at most. I mean, it seems like it could be 2 plus a splash and dash, depending on how much fuel saving they do behind other cars. But of course, now that was one of the GT3s that just went exit stage right through T1. Didn't really catch who it was. It might have been Olivier Gervais in the Lexus RCF GT3. But again, it's just, it could be 2 plus a splash and dash towards the end. We did see that a little bit at Sebring, at Long Beach, didn't we?
Yeah.
2 seconds. We have lost John Huyan.
Oh.
Yeah. Looks like he's had some kind of issue. He's just pulled it off to the side.
Oh, no, he hit front of the wall.
That would be the issue. He has no tire. That was what happened there. I think he just, he's
gone to
spinning up the reach.
Yeah, that's definitely not going to buff out. what just happened there? He was coming through. He was trying to go left into the first approach of Genderbeen, and then turn it right, and that car is now in the garage. That's a real shame for John. That really is, and it's a difficult one at that particular point of the track, because one wrong move, and as we said, it can bite, and John's just really had the wall and everything else thrown at him on that occasion.
I think it's interesting that we've been seeing the Cadillacs, Alex, with the back end spinning up. You saw it with Ege when he was chasing these two, and you've seen it again here with John, and I've noticed it a few times when they've kind of been off camera while I'm looking at one of the other monitors here, that they're spinning up the rears just a little bit more, at least seems more than some of the other cars. Troy seems to be the most stable of all the caddies running in the field right now, but I'm wondering if maybe it's just that the way that they've had to tune these cars, that it's just making the rear end wag just a little bit more. And I know John didn't have too much time going into this race to be able to hook up a setup, although it looks like whatever he had has been working for Troy. But I think that maybe that they've just put too much focus on the front end of the car, and the back end is moving around too much.
Yeah, well, we're past 1/3 of the timer counting down, so let's give you a top 5 rundown of our respective classes. So Daniel Kirby leads overall and in Hypercar Pro, just about 1.2 seconds ahead of Troy Uyen for CMS Pro Blue in the Cadillac V-Series GTP. Then Ben Kesby rounds out your top 3. Good recovery here from Johnny Gutierrez. DNF at round 2 last time out, now running P4, with Ege Karabasak rounding out the top 5, currently sitting 7th overall. And we go to Hypercar Am. Jerry Chen in the 005 Porsche 963 leads the way ahead of the wonderfully sounding Aston Martin Valkyrie of Norm Graff, who's running 6th overall. John Mayer is currently P3 in the class, 8th overall, but he's got a fast charging Gilles Lalonde in 4th place, trying to close what is the best part of a 6.5 second gap. And then Carl Strahal rounds out the top 5 in the AM Racing Alliance Cadillac V-Series R GTP. In LMP2, it's Alec King looking for a 3rd straight win in a row, and he is comfortably leading by, I think, the best part of just over a minute from Mika Dawn at the moment, who is currently running 13th overall. Then it's Tucker Martin, fresh from serving his early penalty in the race. He's now P3 ahead of Preston McNair, who rounds out the top 15 overall. Luciano Ichiazo, who was just seen to have a penalty, has just come into pit lane. So that's going to change things there. LMGT3 Pro, Ryan Paulbert Reyes leads ahead of James Walker. The battle between them is about 4.5 seconds. So that is Porsche versus the Dark Thunder Racing Aston Martin. Then we've got Alan Holden in the number 25 Ferrari 296 GT3. And he's being closely followed by the number 174. That's Matthew Overton. Not too far behind. And we've got Eric Jacobs rounding out your top 5, well, only 5 cars in LMGT3 Pro at the moment. Max Sunthunlap leads in LMGT3 AM and has just dived down pit road. Looks like there's some other GT3 machinery. Alan Holden, Matthew Overton going in, as well as Ryan Paulbert-Reyes. So that is changing quite a few things. Stephen Miller at the moment running P3 in the McLaren 720S GT3. David Anderson, having also served his early penalty in the Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo, rounds out the top 4. And then it's Alexander McQuarrie in the number 23, Dark Thunder Racing. Very, very striking livery on this car that we all, myself, Paul Glover and Ross, we definitely loved that livery. Screaming around the streets of Long Beach, but more to the point, Troy Uyen now has the race lead, 3.5 tenths of a second ahead of Daniel Kirby, who takes a little wiggle onto the grass coming out of T1, and the game resumes up front here, James, as we've got just under 56 minutes on the timer to go.
Yeah, it does. I'm just going to try and see if I can find that overtake. And you might need to bear with me while I try and find it there.
Okay, so... No, not... That was... yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of activity on the track here at Sebring. Even though it is just over 3.7 miles here, Ross, it is a track that is, well, it's bigger than what it actually looks like when you're trying to see what cars are where, and there's so many turns and there's so many different ways in which you can, as a hypercar and an LMP2, try and get the run on a GT3.
As we just
see there. Now here is the overtake. It's going to be down the Ullman Straight. And Troy Uyen throws it to the inside of Dan Kirby, heading into Sunset Bend, gets to the inside line and is half a car length ahead by the apex and gets the move complete underneath the WeatherTech bridge. Ross, that was a pretty good textbook move there from Troy Uyen to get through on Daniel Kirby for the overall race lead here at round 3.
Yeah, Alex, that's exactly right. He definitely pressed the advantage that Cadillac has. If anything, these two cars are almost polar opposites when it comes to top line speed. The Cadillac probably is one of the most powerful on a straight line, and the Porsche is probably towards the back of the field when it comes to straight line. It can hang with it, but when you have a Cadillac on your rear wing and it's shooting past you, there's very little you can do. A little sketchy move there as he goes to the inside of Olivier, who's been having a bit of a rough race, actually. So you said there was a lot of action going on. I looked off to the side and saw him in that Lexus getting rear-ended by Paul Ibbotson coming onto the Ullman Straight. And I think he's still trying to come to grips with that car. I think he's still trying to feel out this course. I can tell that it's definitely one of those tracks where the Lexus is going to struggle if you don't have it very tightly hooked up, because it's going to want to spin up the rears as he's holding up. It looks like Ben Kesby coming through.
Yeah, and also big news in LMGT3 AM, Ryan Paulbert-Reyes showing as a non-finish, a DNF. Oh, well, the man who was, I'm wondering if that might be...
Disconnected.
Yeah, disconnect. What could have been 3 in a row for the man in the 086 Porsche. Now it's going to be James Walker in the number 14 Aston Martin, and what's more, it's a top 3 lockout with Walker, Jacobs and Overton in GT3 Pro with 53 minutes on the timer. This has really changed the complexity of the GT3 Pro battle here, JP, mainly because of the fact that the man who was 2 for 2 so far this season now has had a disconnect and a DNF, and that has really hurt his chance of getting 3 wins on the bounce.
Well, he's not going to, because he ain't here. So yeah, unless he's got some Harry Potter magic going on, or he's able to get back in the session and just hopes all the GT3s come together in one big mass pile-up, he definitely ain't going to win. Pointing out the obvious, but I think that's the thing, dude. We know, you know, we've been with Ross and George for over a year and a bit now, and we know how RF2 funky it can be, and maybe it's just had a little bit of a funky moment. We've seen it with myself and Paul when we're broadcasting as well. It just does what RF2 does, and that's what they're saying of RF2 doing RF2 things. But I think, you know, we'll have to find out if it is just that or if there was more involved in it. And but it definitely was a disconnect, and that was the end of that, unfortunately, for Paul Reyes. So he's just going to have to come back stronger next time, isn't he? And try and get that third win, if he can, of the season, and hold his place at the beginning, at the top of the timing tower.
Yeah, concentrating back now on what's happening in Hypercar at the race lead. Troy Uyen now has got a lead of nearly 1.9 seconds over Daniel Kirby. So, James, you said very much that Troy is one of the younger drivers on this grid. And, you know, I remember the first time I was part of a Champion Sim Racing broadcast was actually when we had the race in Qatar. Where Daniel was actually running with the old version of the 9X8 and literally made mincemeat of the opposition. But now you're seeing drivers like this come through that have this opportunity to prove themselves, and he seems to be the most confident with this car, despite the fact that the Porsche is better on fuel, better on handling. But Troy just seems to have a really good grip on it, and he's making it to his advantage to pull a gap which is now 2.6 seconds. So I'm wondering what's happening with Dan at the moment, because they're both having to go through back market traffic. It's not easy for the pair of them.
No, but if Dan's gone back to his fuel saving days, he's going to jump him anyway. So
True.
You know what I mean? We'll have to find out on that one. Let's talk about the cars in a realistic term, and I'm going to point this out in this way. Alec King in an LMP2 is leading Carl Strawhill and Lanny Hall. They're in GTP AMS, okay? I think a lot of the thing is your skill level. If I got Ross and stuck him in Troy Uyan's car, would Ross still be at the front? Ross, would you be leading the race?
This race? No.
Yeah, no.
First of all, it's Sebring, so it doesn't matter if there's anybody else in the track. I probably wouldn't be leading.
But even if you were in Troy's GTP, would you be leading?
Probably not. No.
Exactly.
No.
So that's the thing. You know, when you stick the driver, it's like putting Max in a Haas. Is he going to win? No. But you can guarantee he's going to give it a good goddamn go. And that's the thing. I think it's just a lot of it is that we talk about skill and skill issues, and people have had skill issues. But I think a lot of it is the driver. If you can drive the car like Troy and if you can practice in the car like Alec King has done, you will be ahead of where he's at the moment. Practice what you're doing. That's the thing. It doesn't matter what car I could put Alec King in. It showed it last season. You know, that guy gave me kittens at Laguna. I think I spat out a litre of 12 in my office, you know, because of the things that he was doing in a GTP. And now he's doing it in an LMP2. It doesn't matter, I think, whether you're a lesser driver, whether you're a higher driver. If you've practiced and you're doing it and you're getting it right and you're, you know, nailing it every single race, you'll be up there.
It's a pretty good analogy of how to put it there, JP. Another replay coming up here.
Glenn Holden.
Oh, in the number 25 Ferrari. Oh, was that Paul Libertson
Yes, it was.
squeezing through?
A literal eye in a needle.
That was basically the width of a gnat's wing he just got through by. So here we go on board with Paul Libertson, darts the... Oh, and he catches the slide halfway through sunset. That is as close as you want to be to the car that's spinning in front. So, going to see it trackside again. This is real time, and then the slowdown. And then... Oh, that was so close. It was like left, right. I'm through. I made it, Mum. I made it. And and look, the back end of the Porsche just completely tries to swap ends. Opposite locked, corrected, and Paul Ibbotson was a very, very lucky man. He's only, even with that, Ross, he is still only, what, 1.5 seconds behind his fellow LMGT3 AM competitor, the 777 of Max Sunthornlap. for the class lead. So it's Aston versus Porsche, and there was definitely Ferrari doing Ferrari things, but then Porsche doing Porsche things behind the wheel with Paul Liverson.
I can't believe he held that, and actually he almost held the position had it not swung out quite as much. He'd only just lost that spot to Mac, but I have to say Paul has definitely been showing a lot of strength and growth throughout the series. I know that he's only there in AM, but man, he's doing so well. I think he's second place right now overall in GT3. And or I'm sorry, third place, second place in class, and James Walker right now is running at the top. You had said earlier that as we've gone through, there's a lot going on track, and there's definitely a lot of chaos. So much has been going on. We've had quite a couple disconnects. Oliver Day actually ended up going out. There was obviously that spin there with Alan Holden. As the hypercars are coming out of pit road, I had to hold my breath because Matthew Overton seems to still have the Long Beach curse, because as a bunch of the GTP traffic was coming through, he just shot right into the middle of them all, just like, you know, cream in an Oreo. He's just right there. So it's funny because as big as a track as this is, and you know, we don't have, you know, 50, 60 cars out there. It still feels like it gets crowded in a lot of different places. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, well, especially when we had 32 starters at the beginning of this race, and now we've got the battle for P3, and this is Messrs. Miller versus McQuarrie. This is for third place in GT3 AM. They're coming out of Genderbeen, going into Le Mans. And that Aston Martin looks a little bit more planted than the McLaren. James, this could be a possibility that Alexander McQuarrie, if he gets a little bit closer to Stephen Miller down this straightaway, they're about to head into Sunset Bend. It could be a good run if he times it well coming out of Sunset down the start-finish straight into T1.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if he did, because he made a mistake going in. He, in fact, nearly hit the wall. He turned in a little bit too early. Max Umflap has had an issue, and he's lost that place to Paul Liverson. We will have a look back at that very, very shortly. Just want to see this play out round turn one. Is Miller going to be able to hold it on the racetrack? He is, which is great for me, because I get to see what is done with Max Umflap.
So...
Oh, he was in.
He's got hit by an LMP2 from behind through turn one. Oh, and the left rear glance, the barriers, and then the front end. That was reminiscent of Paul Dalilana going in through the final chicane with the matter of hours to spare at Le Mans. The GT AM lead, oh dear, like one, and then bang, straight into the tyre barriers. Oh. Well,
the interesting thing was, who was the LMP2?
That's the big $64,000 question that really needs to be answered. Who was the person behind? So that's going to be quite crucial.
Wasn't Alec King?
I think it was.
I think it might have been Micah Dern there, possibly.
No, Locke, the other Micah.
Micah Locke.
Well, Micah Locke's been in the pits for quite a time.
Oh, you might be right, you know. You might be right. It was. Boom.
Oh, the number 2 car.
And he's laps down. And... I'm not going to say it.
We'll leave that
but
one to
bro,
race.
you could be in deep duties. So, unfortunately for him.
Slam dunk on that, I think.
Oh, bro, completely. And he was laps down, and it wasn't, you know, preempting what that GT3 was going to do. And unfortunately, just ran straight and ran him over. You know, it's like me squashing a deer that stands in the middle of the road. Unfortunately, if you're going to stand there, mate, you're going to get run over. But for poor old something lap there, I don't think he was expecting an LMP2 who's laps down coming to run him over. As we see McQuarrie still having a go at Miller into turn number 1. They're going to be running side by side. Coming on the exit, is Miller going to be able to hold it? No, he's had a wiggle on. And unfortunately for Stephen Miller, he does lose that place to Alexander McQuarrie.
And, well, sunset is starting to fast flood in here, Ross, because we've got shadows across the circuit and headlights starting to come on all these cars. So this is where we're going to see this transitional phase where some drivers are going to be really having to, you know, keep that peripheral vision acclimatized over the course of however long the transition is from daytime to nighttime.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Alex. And as we're looking through here, as you see a lot of the headlights coming on, this is going to be especially true for GT3s. They're going to have to remember what it's like seeing those headlights suddenly appear right behind them from some of these faster cars between the LMP2s and the hypercars. That's going to, I think, probably surprise a few of these drivers. I know it's something Stephen Miller has called out a couple times whenever he's been driving around. He really appreciates whenever he can get a nice flash from some of those faster classes coming up, so he knows that they're coming and they don't just surprise him going into a braking zone. He loses it, because you really do need to have that full concentration, but also have that full awareness of what's coming at you, because man, once the lights change and you know you can't see things quite as well, it changes your entire perspective on how you're driving. It can really just zap seconds away from your laps.
He is, I'm sorry to interrupt here, Miller's lines over that last half a lap are very, very weird. And I say that in the nicest possible way. I don't know if there is a nice way of saying it, but he is very tight and very, like, narrow on entry. He's been narrow on a going through Sunset then as well, and he's lost a bunch of time where corners he could have so openly widened the corner. He hasn't. Like, he could have been 2 foot to the right to bring it in, and this has caused what we've got going on here. He needs to open it up. I'm not a driver, right? Don't get me wrong, but Ross, he's very, very narrow.
He's loose. You can see it in his steering input. He's doing a lot of corrections, and I don't think he has a lot of confidence in that car right now. And yeah, he's starting to lose it. And unfortunately, it's not even going into the night, where I know that he's said a few times, you know, it's he's a little bit weaker just because he had a harder time.
Look, he's in the middle of the track almost. He's got 2 feet to the left to open this up. And this is where I noticed it when we were talking, when you guys were talking the first time. He just seemed very, very narrow, which then jeopardizes his exit speed. And he's not, look, he's in he's got a hypercar on the inside, I'll give him that one. But it's a very weird line. It seems slow. That's the thing. He's kind of narrow here. He sits in the middle of the track almost. Narrow there. There's a car off on the left-hand side.
That's McQuarrie.
Yeah,
that's McQuarrie.
One of them is off. Ooh. So, yeah, very, very bizarre line. And it's actually Johnny Gutierrez in the X8.
Oh, okay, right. So, oh dear. Is that going to be at the same turn that we saw Gilles Lalonde lose it? Yes, it is. Yeah, well, the thing was, I noticed that the final sector between McQuarrie and Miller, there was a differential of nearly 1.6 seconds because of the fact that Miller, I mean, he's now just under a lap and a half later. He's 5 seconds behind. And yeah, I mean, it's just that with some cars, you know, you get this nice, good balance. Then you get others that seem to be a bit, how can I say, uncooperative is probably the best term. You know, you think you've got the right setup and the car just completely handles in a different way to what you'd set up and what you were expecting. Here we've got the battle in GT3 AM. This is between Stacey Scotts and David Anderson, who have got a couple of one hypercar and one LMP2 closing in on them, as the darkness is starting to set in rather rapidly with 38 minutes to go. We're on board with David.
Why are you?
In the...
That's what?
Wasn't ready to wait.
What? Yeah, I don't blame him. He was. Oh, we're in the wall, no. And he's hit a hypercar. But why was he? This is why I don't get. Why was he on the? Why did he go to the inside and almost block the hypercar? I don't. There's a. Oh, am I going to get this before this? Let's see if we can get it before.
I don't think he meant to. Yeah, I think he just went too wide there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, just blindsided.
Yeah, but if we can go, if I can get this right, coming here.
One of the Micas was out.
Yeah, it looked like one of the Micah Dawn. I'd made a mistake. But I think for me, it kind of stems from where he started up here with his positioning of the car as he was coming around the corner. It was almost very bizarre that he didn't just open up the inside then, and that hypercar clearly was patient and allowed him to take the corner. Fair play to the hypercar, because there's probably quite a few that would have pushed through on him. But for me, it was a little bit weird at certain places where he could have allowed him through. Like here, I think it's this run down here, he kind of almost blocks him off, which for me was a little bit weird, and I didn't really see the need. Like there, he comes on the inside and blocks him off. That's why the hypercar shot around the outside. I thought he would have left the door open on the inside a little bit more, and then obviously we see him make a mistake kicking out onto the grass, and him and the hypercar ending up in the wall together.
I think it could be just a slight mistake there on David Anderson's part, because he's, you know, when the GTP was trying to get through, sometimes it can cause a little bit of nervousness to set in, and it may have just been that David just went in a bit too deep into that corner, a bit too hot, over-rotated, and bang, it's you know, it's going to be down to an incident. But I understand exactly where you're coming from on his positioning on that one, James. I think it's just a case that you don't want to be making mistakes, and if he just kept it nice and calm and not hit the grass, then we wouldn't have had that incident with the LMP or with the GTP car, because it was the LMP2 that was really impatient and decided to throw the Hail Mary around the outside. Funnily enough, it was Tucker Martin.
Yeah, it was.
So Tucker was not wanting to hang around because he's been trying to close that gap to Alec King, and at the moment, think of it this way, folks, we were waiting to see if anyone was going to get 3 wins in a row. Dan Kirby currently P3 in Hypercar. Jerry Chen, I think, won, if I remember correctly, at Long Beach last time out, but didn't win the season opener at Daytona. Alec King is probably the only one that is on course for a 3 out of 3. And, oh, that was the 4th place. That was Preston McNair that has lost the back end, and also, with it, lost the rear wing. This is coming out of Le Mans corner. Oh, that was one of the 9X8s.
Oh, he smacked the wall. Oh, no, he didn't.
He spun out the rear wheels and reversed it. Whoops.
Yeah, but then this is why I took a minute to find it, because he's had about another 4 times or 5 times incidents after this. So I'm not quite sure what Preston got done. We'll stay on board with this for just a minute or so to see, because he has a lot more moments involved with this going forward.
Oh, I bet. Code brown, code 3, clean up on aisle 3. Now this is going into sunset, and well, that's his Jim Carter impersonation of the night. A 540 with a J-turn. Travis Pastrana, Ken Block, eat your heart out there. And that get insult to his return. Oh.
And then goes in pit lane. So he has. It was very dramatic for Preston McNair getting that car back to pit lane, but I think a lot of that was just basically Ross, I think, trying to go full flat in a car that's got no rear wing on. And well, as we've seen.
Sorry, continue on. Sorry.
No, you spoke. I was like, go on.
Well, no, I was just agreeing with you. He I don't think he knew he'd lost his wing, because if you saw it, the hit wasn't that hard, but he did it in just the right way. And there and now he's not used to having it again, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. He's losing it on his own there at the same time. But I'll be interested to see whether or not he did know it was there, because as I say, the worst thing is though, Ross, he hit that black wall on the exit and he was fine. It was only when he went and reversed it straight back into the concrete one that it went popping up in the air like a piece of popping candy, bless him.
He's gone straight off again.
No.
Oh, dearie me. It's not going well for Preston at the moment. It's gone from insult to injury reversing into the wall, losing the back wing, then doing the 540 with J-turn. I'm wondering if he's got an H-pattern shifter and a rallycross style handbrake to him by close vicinity in his rig at the moment, because that's the only logical explanation if he's done it that way. Gone, yeah, I'll just pull up the handbrake for a little bit of fun. No, not what you want to do in an LMP2 car, mate. Come on. He's just been passed by one of the NX8s as well, which would have either been Johnny Gutierrez or Gilles Lalonde, but at the moment, well, we're coming up to the final third being started in just under 2 minutes time, but at the moment, well, we've got a new overall leader, guys. It's Ben Kesby, who qualified on pole. He served his penalty earlier on in the race and is leading by nearly 8.2 seconds.
Yeah, pit stop. So it wasn't anything exciting. It wasn't an overtake. It literally, Ian and Kirby pitted, and that's why he's managed to get out in front. So for Kesby, fair play to him. Not going to, begrudge the lad leading a few laps and all, but yeah, that was the reason why. Now everything's kind of spread out a little bit here on the race circuit, and they're all a little bit of a gap starting to develop in all classes. You can see even down in LMGT3s, Overton, Holden and Reyes are 1 and 2 laps back from their leader. Scott Anderson are 1 lap back from theirs. Charles McNair is 1 lap back. Hall's 1 lap back. It's only really the GTP pros that we've actually still got people on the lead lap. But I will say here for Karabakh, I think that's right, he's very close to being lapped, so he needs to get a little bit of a wiggle on.
Yeah, was very close to, as he dive bombs to the inside, as if that GT3 car was standing still. I think that was Frank Radosti that he just got through on, going down the Almond Straight and into Sunset Bend, as this car that currently runs P5 in the class. And where is he at the moment? He's currently running 6th overall. Jerry Chen, however, has kept a very, very comfortable lead at the front end of Hypercar Am. I mean, Jerry's shown good consistency over the first 3 rounds of the season. Wouldn't you agree, Ross?
Absolutely. He's just a very steady hand. He even said himself, I think, at the end of the VWSC historic race, that he doesn't always have the pace of some of the fast guys, but he just tries to go slow and steady. And in this case, I think he does have a little bit more pace on some of his competition today. He's certainly been able to separate himself from the rest of the pack if they've had to deal with a lot of different traffic, and he's just kept his nose clean. He's very good at that. He's running GT3s for a long time. He understands these cars. He knows his competitors very well and where they're going to be braking, where they're going to be accelerating. So he's playing to his experience, and it's really showing. I mean, he's separated himself right away the same way that Alec King would for his class.
Yeah, and in the back of his shot there, going through out of Lamar, that was Tucker Martin going a little bit exit stage left onto the grass. But Ben Kesby at the moment leads overall with 29 minutes remaining on the counter here at the 1.5 hours of Sebring, round 3 of the NARS Virtual Modern Sports Car Championship for 2025. So Ben Kesby leads Hypercar and overall. Jerry Chen 5th overall and leads Hypercar Am. Alec King on the verge of maybe getting the 3-peat here tonight in the LMP2 class. Winner at Daytona, winner at Long Beach, now looking for the 3rd one here at Sebring. LMGT3 currently led by the number 14 Aston Martin of James Walker, with Paul Ibbotson, the man who definitely did a Houdini when we saw the spinning Alan Holden through Sunset Bend. He currently leads in the number 165 Porsche 992 GT3 as darkness has very much entrenched itself. And even though there are parts of the circuit here, one of the things I love about a course like Sebring here, Ross, is the fact you see these front brake discs aglow with radiant heat as they fire them into the corners, turn on the apex, power out of it, and then a long blast down a straightaway, then again hard on the brakes, turn it in, rotate the car, carry the momentum through. Brake discs at night sets a very, very different scene for what we normally see during daytime side of things.
Love it. I remember going down to the Daytona 24, and you're absolutely right. It's such a great ambience that it sets. I mean, you've got the roar of the cars going by, you've got all the different crowds and campers, and I know that Sebring is especially into all of the history and the sort of the ritual that you see around the track. So it's all really cool, and I wish that we had the fireworks effects that come at the end of the race. And tonight is a very special treat because it will be the full blood moon. Unfortunately, we can't see that in the sim, but we have that kind of going on in a few hours, so that's kind of fun to have in mind. So a lot of fun and interesting things going on, I guess you could say.
Yeah, very much the case. And JP, it really is starting to sink into the drivers now. They've had that transitional phase, and this final third of the race is really going to test everybody right up until the checkered.
Yep, it will, because that's what darkness does, and that's the thing. It will bring a different driver out of you. You can either handle the dark or you cannot handle the dark, and that's the thing. For these guys, they're going to have to try and get through this, try and survive somehow. If you're not a night driver, survive, because that's really all they need to be able to do through this one at the moment. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, I think, as well. We're coming into the last, what, we've got 20 minutes, I think, give or take, remaining 25 minutes. So it could be an exciting one, as that GT3 he nearly just got punted out of the way then.
Yeah, so Dan Kirby trying to close on in. He's got Troy Uyen not that far in front of him now. But then, of course, when we do hit another pit stop cycle, we've got 25 and a half minutes remaining until we hit the checkered flag for round 3 of the season. The race is very much clearly on. Here comes another Champion Motorsports replay. Now, this is going to be Alan Holden. Oh! And was that into the back of Stephen Miller by any chance? I think it was.
I think he totally was expecting him to go another brake marker. He hit him quite hard. I mean, the rear end jumped off the ground.
It was like Alan actually ollied the car, you know, and that's something you don't see in GT3 racing. I mean, using it like the proverbial skateboard with Stephen Miller as the doorstep in front of you.
That was. I've seen, you know, front to backs happen before, but I haven't seen him that.
Lanny Hall spinning in pit lane.
Oh.
And getting stuck.
Whoops! Whilst they did,
I don't know if he's being. I don't know if he's being serviced there at the same time on that one, but unfortunately for Lanny Hall, he's then gone and had an off-track after. So a few little mistakes for Lanny Hall coming in. There you go, bounce across the grass, and off he goes.
Didn't even have to go over the wall.
No, he literally put it in the wall, didn't he? That's the thing. He backed his rear end right up there. Yeah, lad, smell this. So they got it right close.
Here we go. Moving swiftly on.
Sure, I didn't say nothing. Move on quick. We've got a boss man. Move on quick.
Well, we've got another. This is now the time where, as you rightly said, James, it's about getting through the night. We're 23 minutes and 40 seconds away. In the meantime, Dan Kirby has got through on Troy Uyen for that second position. They've just got through on, well, there's Anderson, and that's going to be close going into the right-hander. Troy gets through, though. He manages to thread the eye of the needle in the CMS Pro Blue Cadillac V Series number 24. So that was on Anderson, and I'm thinking, was that possibly Sunthon Map? I think there might have been just in front as well.
For position.
So, yeah, battling for position. That's for P4 in GT3 AM. So, yeah, Sunthon Lap managing to now pull away from Anderson to the tune of about 2.2 seconds. The Aston Martin seems a lot more compliant than the Mercedes on this circuit, guys, doesn't it?
The Mercedes, as we spoke about before, though, haven't we? You've got to you've got to Netflix and chill it. You know what I mean? You've got to be nice to it. You got to take it for dinner. You got to give it a little bit of wine, soften it up a little bit before you go slamming the throttle down. And if you slam the throttle down, the Merc's going to go, no, you aren't treating me this way. You need to be a little bit more nicer to me. And that is what Anderson has got to do at Sebring, because there is a lot of corners where you think you can slam the throttle down, but really you can't. And for David Anderson, that's one of the tough perks or twerks or whatever you want to call it of the Mercedes, is you got to be nice to it.
Very, very true. Hopefully that maybe at Monterey that car might be a little bit more compliant, but it's not been an easy one for David Anderson tonight here at Sebring. Just under 22 minutes to go. Well, Dan Kirby is on a charge. He has just put in a 1:49.6. He's gone nearly 2 seconds quicker than Ben Kesby. Ross, I think that dreaded splash and dash might be imminent with regards to one particular party, and it's not the guy in second.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I was very impressed that Ben Kesby was able to overcome his penalty that he had to serve and get up there at the front. That is not an easy feat to do against Kirby and Uyan, on even without a penalty. So to see him up there, I think he's had to use everything he's got, and he's just hoping that he can maybe catch a break with some traffic to his competitors, have it go his way, and then have a good fight at the end to be able to just get away from the pits. But I think you're right. I think he's going to have to come in and get a little bit more fuel, spend some more time on pit road.
Yeah, 1.2 seconds that Daniel Kirby just took out of Ben Kesby on sector 2 alone. So this is going to look like a pretty quick lap for the number 90 Porsche 963 hybrid. Gap now just under 4.3 as he powers down the Almond Straight and into Sunset Bend. Kesby very shortly will be crossing the line, unless he's already gone down pit lane. And there is Ben Kesby. So 1:50.554, 1.4 seconds taken out. So gap now down to just under 4.5 seconds. Last lap by Daniel Kirby, 1:49.142. So yeah, 1.4 seconds quicker, as you can see by the interval on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, folks. Kirby is now absolutely lit up, and he's going for it with 20 minutes remaining. This is going to be crucial for what Dan Kirby does now, James, and how Ben Kesby responds in kind, because that gap is being decimated.
Depends if Kesby's got anything to respond with. That's the question. If Kesby's got nothing to respond with, you're just going to see Kirby motor up behind him. You know, that 3.5 is 3.4. It's coming down. We've had Lanny Hall go off track again. Frank Robosti has also been off the circuit. So unfortunately for them, they're not having a good night. We won't keep impounding their misery further. And now we're into traffic at the same time. GT3 traffic, hypercar traffic. It's all kicking off here at the moment, but this is going to be Ben Kesby's run. Whether or not he's going to be able to run away and escape from Dan Kirby, well, we're going to find out shortly.
And there's Jerry Chen just in front. Norm Graff has now taken the Hypercar AM lead a little bit earlier on, maybe through the pit stop cycle, as Daniel Kirby gives Jerry Chen a flash of the headlights. Just say, mind out, Jerry, I'm coming through. I've got a leader to chase down. As number 90 makes his way through Sunset Bend. Both cars looking very, very compliant and very, very composed indeed. Ege Karabasak now jumps into pit lane with 18.5 minutes to go. So that says to me, I would imagine if Karabasak is pitting now, Ross, it's not going to be a case of if, it's going to be a case of when does Ben Kesby pull that trigger and go, I can't hang it out any longer. I need to pit. I need to get fuel to get me to the end of the race. He'll forgo tyres. He'll just put a small amount of fuel in it and get it back onto the circuit, because that effectively could be his race done and over with. And Kirby will be the de facto race leader and on course for 3 in a row.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Ege, I think, because he had a spin, I'm not sure if he's coming in and said, he's just thrown the towel in and said, that's enough, I need to come in and get some tires. But we are in that window, well into that window. We saw Jerry Chen. I think he hit it exactly on the mark at about 22 minutes to go. But you're right. If Ben Kesby's playing kind of an off-filter fuel strategy right now, he's probably going to be coming in soon. I'm sure he hasn't taken tires at all, and he's relying on that that car just being able to hold on to the end. I was going to say all-wheel drive, but I keep forgetting he's not in the Ferrari anymore. So,
that was nasty. Who was that pass? That was I think there was something on lap he clattered into.
I know you're right. You're right.
So
yeah,
Kirby,
that could have been a lot worse.
That could have been a lot worse. That could have been Dan Kirby in the barriers out, and then that would be game over for him, and then everyone would be battling over the win in round 3 of the season. But Kirby was very, very lucky. He used one of his 9 lives on that one, that was for sure. But now again, it's the thing is the back marker traffic is getting closer and closer every single time we go around every single lap here, James, through every single corner. Daniel Kirby is having to fight tooth and nail with trying to get past LMP2 traffic, GT3 traffic, and also Hypercar AM traffic as well. I mean, give Jerry Chen credit where credit is due. He kept out of the way because Daniel just went, flashed the lights and said, mind yourself, mate, I'm coming through. And then he's trying to get through GT3s, nearly has a code brown moment there, and still has LMP2 traffic to get past. This is going to really, really test Dan Kirby's patience more than anything else.
The LMP2 is probably one of the harder classes to drive because you're looking in front when you're passing GT3s. You got to look behind when you got GTPs coming through on you, and the LMP2s have got a tough scenario to go with. That's the thing, and for these guys to manage this traffic like Kirby has, like Kesby has, they've done an exceptional job. Yeah, we had a close moment with some fun lap, but it didn't turn into anything, so that's fine. But I think, for Kesby, he's either got to escape somehow, but I'm not quite sure how he's going to pull away from a flying Kirby who's absolutely motoring. As we talk about Ege is out. He went in pit lane, and then DNF'd, I believe, after that as well. So unfortunately, we've lost Ege. But Kirby closing in. It was down below 3. He's lost a bit of time coming through traffic. Now out to about 4.2, 4.1. But you can see it's dropping at an absolute rapid rate of knots.
Yeah, 15 minutes to go until we hit the checkered. Gap now under 3.85 seconds. As Daniel Kirby is going hunting for Ben Kesby in the dying stages of the 1.5 hours here of Sebring. And after this, we'll be back in action for round 4 at the 1.5 hours of Monterey on April 24th. And that's going to be another circuit where backmarker traffic is going to be prevalent in how you negotiate it. But Dan Kirby has really got the bit between his teeth amidst nightfall here in central southern Florida. He really is going absolutely hell for leather here, Ross. He's not going to keep. We've seen it before when he's been on the back foot as Daniel Kirby, that he's always risen to the occasion, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's the mark of a champion, and he's. You can definitely hear the Jaws theme kicking on about now, and it's in that spot. 14 minutes to go. And Ben Kesby wishes it was 4 seconds because he's got to be holding this pace for the next, it looks like Olivier's off. Yeah. I know he's been having a struggle here. So yeah, Kirby's right on him. So I don't know that there's much that he's going to be able to do other than really hope that he finds some good breaks in traffic. We're coming into the last segments here, so drivers are still pushing their cars. I've already seen a few LMP2s going off, spinning around. Lanny Hall is now out of the race. He was shoved off sort of unceremoniously by Charzo, and that led to some damage that he just had to call it quits. And we see a lot of drivers still diving into the pits in this last little bit. David Anderson's in. And quick shout out to Stacy Scotts. She's coming off of some pretty major surgery and still had the neck brace on for a while, and she's still giving it a good go. She's going back and forth with David Anderson and Radosti, who, good on him for coming back. Actually, he was my teammate running Viper GTEs in 2020. So good to see Frank back and running that. But yeah, lots of traffic going through here. I think is going to be Ben Kesby's saving grace, if anything, to be able to get him through these last, what, 4 or 5 laps that they have to put on through here.
Yeah, I mean, they're running at the moment 1/4, well, call it 150s in Hypercar. I mean, Troy Uyen just did Troy Uyen just lost a bag full of time. I think it was a 2-minute 21. So yeah, it is going to be, as you say, Ben Kesby. If he's starting to fuel save to the point where he's 1.1 seconds slower, but then also will mitigate this by just trying to put as many cars between himself and Daniel Kirby as possible. So with 12 minutes to go, Kesby is your overall leader. Norm Graff leading Hypercar Am and the Aston Martin Valkyrie, which is set to get, at the moment, depending on Jerry Chen, who is closing in on him as well. Jerry just took 2.1 seconds out of the Aston Martin Valkyrie on that previous lap. Then Alec King, 7th overall, leading the LMP2 class, ahead of Tucker Martin by best part of nearly 55 seconds. James Walker leading the way in LMGT3, and Paul Ibbotson looking for a victory in LMGT3 AM. Gap still fluctuating anywhere between 2.8. Or they both had to go for the smash and dash. It was a case of not if, it was a case of when. So the quicker Kirby can be on his marks in his pit box, the quicker he can get out in comparison. Now they start, and Kirby stopped before Kesby did. So that was very, very crucial. This is the run in the pit lane as to who's going to be out of it quicker than who, even if Kirby is fractionally... Oh, Kirby's off. And he's gonna jump him. Is he gonna jump him in the pits? No, no. Kesby dives just in front of him, like literally dropped off the jacks. Kesby floored it, and Kirby went, "Oh damn, I've been denied." But now the fight really begins with 10.5 minutes to go, and it's 9/10 as they came out of the pit lane.
Yeah, no fuel savings left. None to go now. It's running this to the end. And has Kesby got the pace? I'm a little bit worried that he hasn't, unless he used that little bit to try and extend the fuel stop, Alex. That might be why he was losing time, and now he's going to go and motor, but he's got Kirby tucked in right behind him. Still a big lot of work to do for Kesby.
Yeah, Jerry Chen's now retaken the race lead. I think Norm Graff had to pit the Valkyrie.
He did. Yeah.
So, well, Norm has been doing a stellar job as we've got 10 minutes on the timer remaining here at Sebring for round 3 of the NARS Virtual Modern Sports Car Championship. A big thank you to everyone that's been watching on the JP Broadcasting Network and the Champions Sim Racing YouTube channel as well. We have got a dogfight on our hands here, Ross. And, well, grandstand finale, I think it's very much in the cards right now.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here because I think Ross has just cursed Stacey Scott's.
Oh, the right front. The right front.
He clipped it at T1 coming off that corner. Yeah, here you go. The car just started pushing too much.
Oh, and 3 wheels on the wagon, and the wheel goes skyward and pinballs across the other side of the circuit.
Yeah, no marshals were hurt in the recreation of this incident, unfortunately.
And the driver is all fine.
Yeah, no medical centre needed there. But I'm blaming Ross for that one. That's fine.
All right, James, who's running away with this one? Final minutes.
Kirby's going to get him. I don't think Kesby's got the overall pace.
Are we going to have a finale like we had 2 years ago?
Oh, blimey.
In real life, I mean.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. I didn't watch it. I don't really watch much endurance racing. It balls me. I end up sleeping.
But
yeah, I sleep. I end up falling asleep, unfortunately. I'm not an endurance racing fan.
Wow.
Oh, stop it. Don't
chastise
me. Alex can't barely remember what he did yesterday, let alone 2 years ago.
Oh, shut up, you tart.
He's older than me.
No, yeah, and that's saying something. I think Kirby's got this. Now we'll see. I was waiting for GT3 backmarker traffic. If Kesby can negotiate his way through the traffic and keep Kirby at bay, then he's got it. But I don't think that's going to be enough. He really needs to be a lot further ahead. But it was Kirby that got on his jacks earlier and nearly jumped him in the pit lane. But you've got to remember that Kesby was right towards the end of the pit lane, so he had the opportunity of going, right, okay, he's off on his jacks, I need to drop down now. And there, straight away, that's Jacobs in front of Kirby. And then you've got Ibbotson just ahead. So straight away, that has given what was the advantage back to Kesby. So this could, it's just dependent on how aggressive does Daniel Kirby become. The gap is now 1 second, 1.1 seconds. So you're probably talking about another 4 laps, including this one. I think it's going to be tight. But if Kirby can really wring the neck of that 963 Porsche over the next couple of laps and get that gap down to about 4/10, then I think Kesby is going to be worried.
We've got Stacey in YouTube chat. Dadgone! I crashed out with 10 minutes to go. Sounded like Mater out of Lightning McQueen then. That was funny. So yeah, Stacey, I know we saw it, darling. You finished up like a wheelbarrow.
But credit to her. Credit to her. Now here's that back market traffic coming into. No, kiss me.
He's off.
That was Olivier Gervais in the Lexus right in front. Oh,
I think he just, yeah, he had a bit of a moment going into the hairpin, and
it's a really poor angle. I can't get. I think he hit him.
Yeah, left side rear.
Yeah.
Oh, he did. Oh.
Watch.
Oh.
Snaps, bang.
Absolute shame.
Well, Ross, there's your dramatic moment over and done with.
Well,
and you hate to see that. He wasn't trying to. It was just, he had been struggling with that Lexus through a good part of the race, but we'll see what happens. I mean, Kirby still has a chance to run into some of these GT3s himself, so he's not out of it yet. But that light is getting dimmer. That light, help of light.
The light
at the end of the tunnel is looking brighter for Kirby than it is now for Kesby, but there is still any possibility, and I think you summed it up quite well there, as the 2 GT3s that we were just seeing battling nearly went into the path of Ben Kesby coming out of the final corner just then. But that gap, I mean, if it was 15 minutes to go and you said, Ben Kesby could reel him in, yes, but it's 5 minutes, and that's 3 laps, including this one.
Dude, it's not going to happen.
This is unless Daniel Kirby hits some kind of trouble, then it's game over.
Yeah, but you got Kimi Räikkönen behind the Porsche. Not happening, I'm afraid. Dan will take this. It will be sensible. He always is. He's an Iceman. It's always him just cruising up to the back of people, then making mistakes, and he goes through. And that's it. And Stacey, I know you've got a net brace on, and I wasn't giving you grief, my love. I was just saying you ended up like a wheelbarrow, with 3 wheels on your trolley. So unfortunately, it's what it is.
But good effort nevertheless, Stacey. Well done coming back.
Yeah, of course.
Shout out to her for that.
Yeah.
That's Stephen Miller that Dan Kirby has just got back through on. Now that gap was, 3 seconds? It's now down to 1.8. So it's now the case of Kesby is going to lose time behind Stephen Miller as Daniel Kirby comes out of Le Mans, down the back stretch through Ullman Straight, and now it's clear air between the two of them for the moment. But the gap has gone from 1.8 up by nearly a second to nearly 2.8 seconds. But it's going to be this and 1 more to go. 2 more laps remaining. And Dan Kirby is on course for the 3-peat. So is Alec King in LMP2. And it's going to be 2 in a row, I think, for Jerry Chen and Hypercar Am. For our LMGT3 Pro, James Walker on course for his first win of the season. Paul Ibbotson, I'm trying to remember if he's picked up a win already. I think he has. So it'll be 2 out of 3 for him. But 2 drivers who have one who's been relatively untroubled, Alec King, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more. But Dan Kirby has had to fight for this one. And more to the point, well, Ben Kesby, despite serving that early penalty, to still be in contention for the race win up until that moment with Olivier Gervais in the Lexus RCF. Well, it just shows that Daniel Kirby knows that he's not going to have it all his own way this season, Ross. If, you know, Dan will probably think I got the Joker card thrown to me on that particular occasion, but Ben Kesby was like saying, what if that hadn't have happened? Could have been a different story.
Yeah, you know, I feel for him just because it is one of those situations where that's what multi-class racing does, and you'd love to see it go right to the end, where they're just fisticuffs and working it out, you know, seeing the strategies converge, and it just be a matter of driver and driver. That just shows you it is all a matter of what is happening on the track in an endurance race. You can't control the fact that it is the other classes and the other drivers, and fortunately, that's what he wanted to have happen to Kirby, you know, give himself a bit of a break because that gap was coming down for sure. But it is unfortunately what it is. That's what happens in endurance racing. You know, they put on a good show. I'd love to see Troy Uyan up there with them and Ege up there with them, you know, have a four-way battle. Even Johnny Gutierrez, although it didn't look like the 9X8 was able to really do as much as I thought it would have been able to do here. We saw Gilles Lalonde. He was really struggling with some of the braking into some of the corners and just kind of sliding out. Oh, we got a big mess coming out of Sunset, it looks like.
Oh dear.
The LMP2s. I think Ichazo is in that mix.
Oh, Luciano Ichazo, who was P2 coming into this round of the season. So that means we'll have a yellow ounce in Sector 3. But we are down to the final 60 seconds of this race, and well, the gap between Dan Kirby and Ben Kesby has stabilized to about the tune of 2.5 seconds as our leader makes his way into the next right-hander, then into the slight complex here, going through Collier Curve, and then I think heading into Tower very shortly. But what can you, so we can have a look at the Champion Motorsports replay. Now this is one of the 9X8s. Is this Gutierrez?
Gilles Lalonde did something rather bizarrely. Yeah, I think it counted him that he'd had an incident there. This was Olivier Gervais. He goes in that Lexus really struggling. And then we had Preston McNair do something as well. We'll go back to Dan Kirby and live pictures after this one. And unfortunately for Preston, around he goes.
Yeah. So timer has hit 0. This is going to be the final corner of the race, and Dan Kirby makes his way out of the final corner here at Sebring International Raceway. It's going to be 3 for 3, the checkered waves, and after 90 minutes he takes the win by only 2.7 seconds between himself and Ben Kesby. Jerry Chen is bringing home the bacon in the Hypercar AM category. He's done a really consistent job. James Walker is flashing the headlights as he has pretty much taken the victory here in the LMGT3 AM class, as there is Paul Ibbotson coming down the Ullman Straight for the last time. He's got Eric Jacobs behind him flashing his lights like a good one. So in towards Sunset Bend they go. Jacobs is going to take second in the LMGT3 Pro class, which is going to have a whitewash of the virtual rostrum. Ibbotson out of the final corner. He will pick up the win in GT3 AM, and it's 3 for 3 for Alec King once again. Well, there we go, gents. A fitting way to end underneath the floodlights and patches of darkness here at Sebring for round 3, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this race. It was a good race. We had our moments. We had cars going up on their front end. We had a bit of everything. We had cars coming out into wheelbarrows. Yeah, it was a great race until it wasn't, which was about 2 minutes from the end, unfortunately, with Ben Kesby. But there's Jerry Chen coming over, wrapping up the Hypercar Hypercar AMs. Over the line he goes there, and we've got Bill, the flag man, waving frantically.
Yeah, with his cousin Barney doing the business on iRacing.
Exactly. That's the only way I could put it. I couldn't think of anything else on that one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Ross, your thoughts on what was a great third round of the championship? The excitement's still to come. There's plenty more races for us to get through this year.
Yeah, with the Monterey race coming up at Laguna Seca here in April 17th, we've got a little bit of time before then. But yeah, this is a good one. Certainly, a lot of incidents happening on track. A lot of drivers really seeming to struggle with the way that tire wear would be and tire usage over the course of the race. I mean, but every class had to deal with it. You saw Hypercars, LMP2s, and GT3s. Seems like the bumps were really just ravaging those dampers as much as they could, but overall it was a good race. I will say one interesting thing that George Angelides pointed out coming out of the because he's actually down with HRC testing and getting ready for the big real show. He said that the LMP2 cars are going to be a menace for the hypercars, and I think we actually saw some of that even early on with Lanny Hall and a couple of the others that were in the back. They were right in the middle of that LMP2 traffic, so I just love to see that it's a lot more of in sim and real life kind of coming together, our own sort of convergence and just being able to replicate real life conditions. So great race. Great to see the cars behaving like they should. You know, I feel terrible for Ben Kesby, you know, having such heartache right at the end of a race, but fortunately that's how it is sometimes.
Yeah, as they say, folks, that is racing in a nutshell. So Daniel Kirby, after 49 laps, wins round 3 for 3 for the number 9 seat, and goes into round 4 on April 24th for the 1.5 hours of Monterey at Laguna Seca with a maximum score of 90 points. It was close, but no cigar for Ben Kesby, with Troy Uyen rounding out the top 3. Johnny Gutierrez comes back from a DNF at Long Beach at round 2 to round out the top 4. Jerry Chen takes P1 in Hypercar AM. Norm Graff and John Marr round out the top 3, so Porsche, Aston Martin and Cadillac represented. Alec King 3 for 3 after dominant wins at Daytona. Long Beach now adds Sebring to that list. Can anyone usurp him next time out at Monterey in a few weeks' time? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. Gilles Lalonde and Tucker Martin round out your top 10, with Mika Dern rounding out the top 3 in the LMP2 classification, with Carl Strahal being the last finisher when it came to Hypercar. And Preston McNair and Luciano Echazo round out your top 5 in LMP2. James Walker becomes the first new winner, apart from Ryan Paulbert Reyes, to take a win in LMGT3 Pro. Paul Ibbotson, Mr. Houdini of Sebring, takes the win in LMGT3 AM. Eric Jacobs takes second in GT3 Pro, ahead of Stephen Miller and Max Dunlap, who ran at the top 3 in AM. Matthew Overton makes it a clean sweep for Aston Martin in the top 3 in the Pro class, and rounds out your top 20. Alexander McQuarrie, Alan Holden, David Anderson, Ryan Paulbert Reyes, Frank Radosti, Michael Locke, Olivier Gervais, Ege Karabasak, Stacey Scott, Lanny Hall, John Uyen and Oliver Day round out the finishers. As well, welcome back into the booth, and congratulations first of all on your P3 in GT3 Pro, Matthew.
Thank you very much. I don't think I really deserve it, in that I managed to, as Ross would pull an Overton coming out of Sunset and just bash my front suspension. But yeah, I'm pleased to be able to pull it back for a third in the podium. So yeah, exciting race. Thought it was pretty good. People seem to pay attention to each other's races pretty well, so happy about that.
Awesome. Well, let's get underway with the post-race interview show here for the Virtual Modern Sports Car Championship for round 3, the 1.5 hours of Sebring. Let's turn our attention, I think, first of all, to our overall race winner. He's made it 3 for 3 so far, despite a bit of a last few moments drama with him and Ben Kesby. Let's see if we can bring in Daniel Kirby into the booth. Let's see if I can do that. Well, Mr. Daniel Kirby, welcome back to Victory Lane. 3 from 3, but this time you had to fight for it, didn't you?
Yeah, that was a very, very difficult race in this car.
Well, firstly, talk to us about how difficult things were in quali, because you qualified P3 on the inside of row number 2, and you were fighting a battle with Troy, and then also in the latter stages with Ben. The Porsche was definitely up against the fence when it came to battling the caddies.
Yeah, it really, I think this track really like exploits a lot of its weaknesses. So it was a struggle to even put down a decent qualifying lap. And then I didn't have clean air behind Troy the first like half the race, so it was hard to use the car's pace in the corners. And then yeah, Ben had an epic comeback drive, and then I was reeling him in a little bit at the end, but sucks it. He got kind of tangled with somebody.
Yeah, that was Olivier Gervais in the sole Lexus RCF that we had in the GT3s overall. But still, to come back with 3 wins, obviously Daytona and Long Beach were pretty good races. You must feel that victory. Okay, yes, it was a little bit bittersweet with the GT3 car in the way for Ben, but to go to Laguna Seca on April 24th for round 4 with a maximum score, you must be pretty happy with that so far.
Yeah, it's been a really good season for me. Basically, just trying to maximize result every time, and that's, I guess, what benefited me today. And Laguna Seca is going to be super fun. I love that track.
Oh, that's ominous words right there, Mr. Kirby. But thank you so much for talking to us in the post-race interview show. Anyone you'd like to thank before we let you go tonight, Dan?
Just everyone, the admins and SGS guys. Everyone puts in a lot of work and free time for us to do this stuff, so it's greatly appreciated.
Brilliant. Dan Kirby, our overall winner and Hypercar Pro winner, thank you so much for talking to us. We'll see you for round 4 at Laguna Seca on April 24th. Have a good rest of the evening, Dan. Right, okay, next up, well, let's head to our Hypercar AM class winner. Let's bring him into the booth. Jerry Chen joins me. Him in there. Jerry, good evening and congratulations on the W. Welcome to Victory Lane, my friend.
Hey guys, thanks. Yeah, it was a pretty physical race with all the bumps.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy for any of you hypercar drivers out there, but I mean, at one point, did you expect that Norm was going to be a bit more of a threat this time? I mean, we know what that Valkyrie sounds like, but at one point I saw that you'd pitted, then he was leading, then he had to pit quite close to the end. It was a tough race, as you say, but do you think that Aston could give you a bit of trouble if Norm continues to improve over the course of the season?
Yeah, especially that Aston on tracks like Sebring, where because it's just you need kind of downforce, and that's where that Aston is really good. It's medium and high speed corners. It's got tons of downforce. I think we were offset on the pit stop strategies a little bit, so that's why we were kind of swapping the lead back and forth. Yeah, but I was testing out my tire and fuel strategy for next Saturday, so I had to do a little bit of fuel saving there just to make 13 laps. The 963 does like pissing fuel out the back, so.
Yeah, and we thought it was one of the best cars for fuel in the hypercar class, to be honest with you, Jerry. But the main thing is you made it work and you got the win. You must be pretty happy with, sweating buckets during a very, very physical race with the bumps, the undulation, the differing tarmac surfaces. But, going into Monterey, Laguna Seca on April 24th, you looking forward to the challenge there with that Porsche?
Yeah, especially with how tight it is and with the LMP2s. Even here at Sebring, they were only about 2 seconds slower than the hypercar. So at Laguna, it's probably going to be even less. So that should be really interesting trying to pass the LMP2s there with all the elevation changes and the super tight, narrow track. So
brilliant. Well, Jerry, before we let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening, who would you like to give a shout out to?
Shout out to Matt, for organizing the races, and Alec. for putting up you guys on the broadcast, and everybody on track was awesome. So thanks, guys.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Our Hypercar AM class winner for round 3 here at Sebring, Jerry Chen. Thank you so much for joining us. We're now going to head on to our next class winner, which, no surprise here, well, let's bring him into the booth. None other than the number 84, Alec King, another driver that has now secured 3 in a row. So let's see if we can bring him down into the booth. Let's just see. Alec, welcome back again to Victory Lane. 3 out of 3. You didn't have it all your own way in qualifying. Explain that one to us.
No, so funny enough, me just trying to focus on putting in a lap. On my out lap, I set the fuel mixture to safety car to try and like save a little bit of fuel for quali. And never changed it the whole quali session. So once I got on the last lap, I saw that Tucker and Miko went faster, and I was like, man, I know I can go faster than this. And then I realized I switched it. So I turned the map back to qualifying mix, and then was a second up on the quali time, and then ran out of fuel going through sunset. It was like, oh, okay. So we just ran it with air and started third, but the guys made it easy on me going into T1 with Micah going wide, and then Tucker spinning it in turn 2. I was like, oh, okay, this is how we're gonna do it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you won it by, I think it was just over a minute by the end of the race. So the dominant streak continues. But yeah, like you said, Tucker and Micah made it very, very easy. I mean, like we were like, all of us in the commentary box, we were just like thinking, hang on, what on earth's going on here? And like literally, they handed it over to you on a silver platter, and you know, you did exactly what you did at Daytona, exactly what you did at Long Beach. You just hit your marks every single time, even with the transition from daytime to nighttime. It was just like you were having a Thursday evening drive in the countryside, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice having the victories like this where you can just kind of pull away and put a gap on. It was cool Tucker getting second because he's one of my best friends. So the fact that I could take him for a walk tonight was pretty fun. But no, I mean, these races, it's good to get these and to have these, but not every race can be like this. As much as I'd like for every race to be like this, I know there's going to be races going to the end of the season where, it's not going to be easy like this. We're going to have a fight. So we just got to take them with what we can and do what we can do. So, once you get out there, it's really just trying to find a steady pace. And that was one thing I did struggle with a lot last year when I was in the hypercar was I could get out front, but I would just make mistakes on my own, pushing too hard, thinking too much. And so now this year, I've really tried to bring it back a little bit and go slower to go faster. And what that's done is just allowed, to not have those little mistakes. So, you instead of losing half a second, you just lose a tenth. And, with this class being in basically spec cars, we're all in the same car, we're on the same tire. It can be really, really close. That's what it comes down to. So just being able to pull that tenth of a second to 2/10 of a second kind of every lap, it builds out over a race distance, and you just really have to hit your marks to do that. So no, I'm really excited for this. 3 in a row is really fun. Really great start to the season. This is the best start to a season I've had with CMS. So I'm really looking forward to the rest of this year. I believe the next round is at Laguna Seca, and that was a fun track for me last year. Was able to beat Dan Kirby in a hypercar last year. No, just really looking forward to this. I'm super thankful for this kind of start to the season, and yeah, just looking forward to what's next.
Well, you've really summed it up in a nutshell there, Alec. But the only thing I need to do is say, firstly, thanks for talking to us, and finally, who would you like to give a shout out to this evening?
Just thank you to the whole CMS crew, Storm Gang Simulation. We've been working really hard on the mods. You guys over at JPV for always coming, commentating, taking care of us. Love to have it. Just the whole Champion Motorsports group. We've all been putting in some time working on setups and really, got a good strategy for all of us. We were starting to pick it up. Just my whole family for letting me do this. My grandfather and grandmother are watching this, and my mom and my girlfriend are all watching this. So thank you to them for letting me do this. And yeah, no, just thank you to everyone for coming out, all the competitors and everyone doing the races with us. So it's been a blast. Hopefully we can get even more people for Long Beach. It was a little bit lower car count tonight, but now just looking forward to the rest of the season.
Brilliant. Alec King, our LMP2 class winner, 3 in a row. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on April 24th for the next round on at Laguna Seca. So well done tonight.
Thank you, guys. You guys have a good one.
Okay, well, we're going to spice it up a little bit here. Let's bring in our second different winner this season for LMGT3 Pro. Ryan Pulbert Ray's streak has been broken because it's the number 14 of James Walker, who I don't...
James had to leave, but we've got number 2, who is Eric Jacobs.
Let's bring the man in. Eric Jacobs, good evening. Well, how's about that? A surprise to finish in P2. How are you feeling after that one?
I'm super excited. Sebring is usually not a great race for me. Neither is Daytona, and so Daytona was not a good race for me. But Sebring, the tides have changed, so I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think Jerry Chen actually summed it up for everybody that it's quite a physical track with all the bumps, especially in the GT3 car. Am I right?
Yeah, and especially at night with the lighting and the lighting changes, it's a very interesting experience to say the least.
But still, to have a podium, that gives you a bit of a motivational spur to carry on and pushing and hopefully get yourself down to victory lane. Of course, James did a really, really good job, despite the fact that Ryan DNF'd at the early part of the race and put his win streak at an end. How do you feel sort of like now from this point onwards that you can build on that moving into upcoming rounds? Of course, we've got Laguna Seca on April 24th for round 4. That's going to be a different challenge altogether, but the Aston Martin is a very compliant car nevertheless.
Yeah, I think the rest of the season is going to be very, very interesting. I have a feeling that that the top 3 is going to be a battle and be a narrow margin, and hopefully I'll be one of them. So we'll see what happens.
Fantastic, Eric. Congratulations on second place, and we'll see you on April 24th at Laguna Seca.
I hope so.
Brilliant. Well, we've got one final interview to do before we wrap things up. It's time to turn our attention to LMGT3 AM. Paul Ibbotson is our winner this time round at Sebring. Paul, welcome to Victory Lane and welcome to the interview booth. How are you feeling after that W?
I'm pretty tired. That was quite a long race.
But we need to talk about this moment when you were, I think I've nicknamed you the Houdini of Sebring after Alan Holden spun it at sunset and you had cat-like reflexes. You went left, right, the back end stepped out through the second half of sunset and you caught the slide perfectly. It was very much a case of 50-50. You were either going to be pointing down the right way of the track or possibly ending up in the barrier on the left-hand side of the circuit. How are you feeling after that one? Because I'm sure your heart rate and blood pressure jumped at the same time.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was a tough one. I mean, it's a blind corner to begin with. You're coming around the corner and don't have much time to react when you see a car. And I saw Alan there and decided to go behind him around to the left. And just, had faith that all the people here know the CMS rule to keep the brakes locked if you lose control. So I could predict that he wasn't going to go too far back. And yeah, like you said, that I just had to hang on for the ride and hopefully I could keep it pointed straight, and it worked out.
Yeah, I mean it's not an easy track around here at Sebring, but you got through the worst of it. You, as you said, it's physically, it's mentally demanding, especially with a circuit that has so much undulation. GT3s is a bit more pronounced because obviously the suspension travel, the damper rates and all that. But you must be feeling pretty happy now that you've got yourself back on the top step and ready to go racing at a track that is very, very helpful with regards to the car that you're currently driving, the Porsche GT3.
Yeah, I'm happy to get a good result
muted
here.
himself.
I know David. I think David was on the top step of the championship, and hopefully I brought myself back up a bit. Yeah, and I'll be looking forward to getting to a track that's not as rough as this one. Like you said, we do have a lot of damper adjustments, suspension adjustments in the GT3s that we didn't have in the Cup car the previous week. So I was able to dial out a little bit of the fast bump and rebound to help with the bumps a little bit. I'm racing in VR, and I got to say the the scenery is shaking around quite a lot while I'm trying to drive at Sebring.
Well, Paul, congratulations on the win in LMGT3M. Before we let you go, and obviously get yourself an opportunity to get a cold, well-deserved beverage down your throat, anyone you'd like to thank?
Yeah, starting with my wife, of course, I'd like to thank her for letting me have the time to do this, and all the significant others of the racers. Matthew for adminning this group, David Anderson for having CMS here for us to race in, and George Angelitas and his crew, Ross, for making some amazing cars for us to drive. And
I want to
you
thank
guys for
you for that
broadcasting it.
amazing needle that you threaded there, going through Sunset, man. That was the most exciting 911 drift I've ever seen.
Yeah, I had a couple of good moments in this race, and luckily it all worked out.
Brilliant. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us in the booth post-race interview. Congratulations on the win, and we'll see you at Laguna Seca for round 4 on April 24th. Well done tonight.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Well, that's all the interviews done and dusted for tonight, folks. JP, not long to wait, though. 5 weeks, and then we go to a really, really good racetrack. Laguna Seca, it really is it's going to be a roller coaster ride, especially with the fact we've got the corkscrew of all things to test all of these cars, and hopefully a lot more than 32 drivers next time out.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. To be fair, though, I think there's certain tracks that you don't need more than that. And Laguna's probably one of them. You know, you don't need a massive amounts of tracks, massive amounts of cars. I think you just need the quality that you get. You know what I mean? And I think we get that here. And I don't think we're going to want 50 cars hurtling around Laguna, because it could just be an absolute mess. But we'll find out next time, I think, on that one.
Yeah, well, folks. That really wraps up our coverage of the NARS Virtual Modern Sports Car Championship Round 3, the 1.5 hours of Sebring. And on April 24th, we head to California, to Laguna Seca for round number 4. Then it's Detroit on May 15th, the Glen on June 12th, Motorsport over in Canada on July 24th, Road America 21st of August, 25th of September, we head to Indianapolis Motor Speedway for that round, and then the penultimate round heads to Road Atlanta, and VIR will be the season finale on November the 20th. You've been listening to Alex Goldschmidt, James Parfitt, Ross Smith, and also Matthew Overton. A big thank you to everyone that's been watching on both the Champion Sim Racing and the JP Broadcasting networks. As I always like to say, race hard, race fair, and if in doubt, well, you better go flat out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.